Hello, everyone. So, welcome back to BI Podcast, where we discuss biomedicine and bioinformatics in a nutshell. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Andrika. I will be your host for today, and we are joined by our another host. So, will be Bernard, and also there's also will be my friends Karin and Jeremy in here accompanying us. And in this special podcast or episode, we actually have a special guest, and we are really honored for this person to come to our podcast and share about his experiences and a lot of things to us. And without further ado, maybe we just start to introduce him. So he's Kogyo Fidelito, and Kogyo Fidelito is our seniors. Maybe we haven't really met him in real life, but we've met him before during Alumni talk, and we are really inspired by his academic journey. And as he actually graduated from i3L in 2019, majoring in tumor biology stream, same as me. So that's a really good thing. And he also further pursue his PhD in University of Melbourne, and I guess focusing on the prostate cancer metabolism, in Department of Anatomy and Physiology. And before even he pursue his PhD, he have a lot of projects, also interns, and I think it's a really good thing that we mentioned this internships and his experiences, because it might be good for the listener to know and maybe refer to this. And in 2016 and 17, he actually go to, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Suzhou University in China under Yufangxi Labs. I'm really sorry if I mistaken the pronunciation. And he do the summer research intern there in the Institute for Translational Medicine, focusing on the potential of mesenchymal stem cell as a cellular therapy for treating sepsis. And in the next year, he learned about the role of MSC in the EMT in murine mammary carcinoma model, and examining the development of chemo-resistant doxorubicin-resistant PF41 cells. And that's really, really interesting. And I've seen that you actually do this topic I guess you present it in international in the ES comms in Groningen, Netherlands. That's really fantastic. And you also presented in the literature review competition, if I'm not mistaken. And that's really a good one. And in addition, in 2018, he also do some research intern in the Duke and US Medical School, Singapore, in the Department of Cardiovascular and Metabolic Disorders. And he works at the discovery of novel mitochondrial peptides encoded by non-coding small open reading frames. And in the later year, he also do his thesis project in the Duke and US Medical School. Okay, so I think that's a really outstanding one, and he has a lot of achievement in competitions as well as in conferences. I think he's really talkative. He has a lot of conferences that he attended, and that's a really type of biomedicine field. Okay? And also when we look at this CV, our friend Bernard has a really nice question. So Bernard, would you like to ask something to start this podcast?
Okay, I think when I read your CV, I saw that you had an intern in NUS, right? And how can like inexperienced people like me and other students in undergraduate biomedicine can get their role, because in my experience, I reached out the professor and they don't even reply our email.
So how do you get this internship? Like, would you mind to share? Well, how do you get this internship, maybe?
So probably I should start mentioning like the start of my academic journey as well, because
of course.
it's all related in a way that it's supporting one and another. So as you may know, I joined i3L in 2015. So I'm the second cohort of i3L students basically. And at that time, the internship opportunities are very limited, to a point that I think it's very competitive as well. Like for example, at A-Star at that time, there were 3 openings for internships, and for Suzhou University in China, there was only 1 position at a time. And basically, it was a very tight like interview and application processes by the international office at the time. And I ended up in Suzhou University basically. And then from that point on, I learned a lot in Suzhou. I gained a lot of lab experiences, like just like cell culture, animal work, basically injecting animal, how to cull the mice, and how to process the tissues and all that. So just imagine, like as a first year student, like at the end of your first year, you suddenly go to somewhere like in China, trying to learn all of these new skills, and it's overwhelming at the time. But at the same time, I learned a lot from that experience, because I have to say that during my time at Suzhou University, the supervisors or the PI itself is very open to whatever I'm interested in, or whatever I want to learn basically. And I have the opportunity to basically gain as much technical skill as possible from that particular lab. That's why I decided to return to the same lab the following year, just to maximize the potential that I have, or the feasibility of stuff or projects that I can do in that particular lab. And after my second time there, I realized that although that I learned a lot from my time in China, I've reached a point where I don't think that I can grow more as a person, and I don't think that I'm being challenged as hard as my first year. So I decided to finish my second year in China, and for my third year I should move somewhere where I can feel triggered to learn more, or to think more about what I want to do in the bigger picture of like the scientific career itself, but as well as what is the big picture of the field or scientific fields that I want to focus in later on in my career. So I decided to send an email to like, I think more than 20 different group leaders in Singapore. So I sent an email to like a group leader in IMB at the time, Institute of Molecular Biology at A-Star. Now they don't have that anymore. They basically transition everything to SRIS, the Skin Research Institute of Singapore. And I've sent an email as well to group leaders from SIGM, the Immunology Institute, as well as GIS. And I also went to some interview as well at the NUS, but it was an interesting experience to know that at the time I was like on my third year of undergrad, and then I had this interview with the group leader from NUS, I think from the Department of Biological Sciences. And throughout the interview, the PI basically asked me about what I want to learn, because he saw my CV and she realized that I've learned quite a lot for an undergrad. I've cell culture experience, culturing a lot of different cell types, a lot of molecular techniques, as well as a lot of animal skills as well. And that group leader basically asked me why do you want to come to my lab and why do you want to join my lab? Because I don't think you can learn more from what you have learned from your previous internships. And that moment really changed the way I think about what I want or what's the point of an internship itself. You may think that it's cool to do an internship abroad, or it's cool to spend a summer in a lab or something like that. But when you think carefully about it, you need to start to think about what is the thing that you want to learn, what is an additional skills or additional critical thinking that you can learn from an experience. That's why I decided to go to another lab, which is at the Duke NUS Medical School. It was very uncomfortable because the field itself is very molecular biology, a lot of protein works, a lot of cloning as well. And when I went for an interview, the PI asked me a very interesting question. Just imagine, again, a third-year student from Indonesia, and then that PI asked me about what do you think what we can do to detect a protein-protein interaction while still preserving the transient interaction, because I'm sure you have learned it before at uni as well about yeast to hybrid technique or mass spec or immunoprecipitation and all that. All of those technique has basically all those techniques have their own limitation. And my lab in Singapore at the time was really interested to learn and identify novel interacting partners of novel proteins basically. And I had that question, and it really triggered the way I think about stuff, to a point that I'm interested to develop novel techniques and I'm interested to discover novel stuff, to a point that no one has ever looked into it. And I was the one who was busy trying to find out. And it requires a lot of critical thinking. And I guess if I come back to your question, Bennett, as to how can we as an undergrad apply for an internship abroad or try to get some research experiences, I guess it's a lot of hard work. Just don't think that by sending an email to one group leader or one PI, you will expect a reply from them. Just imagine how many students will send an email to that one group leader. And it requires a lot of persistence. It requires a lot of patience as well. But one thing that I realized throughout my interview or my application processes is that you will eventually end up where you belong. Like for now, you think that, oh, I couldn't get accepted in this lab or in that lab, but eventually you will realize that the group leader who replies to you is where you basically belong to. And it's like a matching, it's like a dating basically, trying to find someone who will match whatever you want in your life. And that's exactly applicable to research as well. I think try to send more, try to be broad in terms of your research interests. Like you may think that you are not interested in this one particular topics, but the more you read, the more you realize that there is a beauty in different fields, in different research areas, basically.
That's really good message. It's like be confident in it and try to apply as many as you can, and eventually the one that match you will be the one that will become your interns. I think that's really good insights, I think.
But to add on that point, like I
Mhm.
mentioned, something that we don't really think about when we were in undergrad, at least for me at the time, I didn't
Mhm.
really think about what I want from this experience or what I want from these research internships. Because a lot of people, they just want the experience, they just want to spend time abroad. It's like a holiday if you think about it. But if you think carefully about what you want to achieve from that experience, and you somehow you can show it from your email to the supervisors, they will realize that you really are interested in certain things and you have a bigger thing that you want to achieve in your life. And as a group leader, they really want to help you. It's just that most of the time we tend to send a generic email saying that, oh, I'm from this uni, I'm a third-year student, I'm interested in your project, can I come for an internship? And that's not enough for them to know more about you. So try to put yourself in that perspective as well. Like, they need to know you before they can actually say that, oh yes, you can come to my lab. So try to be more personal in sending those kind of emails, and try to put more thoughts about what you want to do or what you want to achieve from that experience, basically.
Okay. That's a really good message though, and I've seen that you've already been exposed in a lot of research opportunity abroad, and I guess in different countries. And I'm curious though, what is the biomedicine prospect differs between in Indonesia and also the one that I guess you've been studying right now, or maybe in your past experiences in different countries? So in terms of their research opportunities, different facilities, as well as funding, how different is this in Indonesia, and will it be a really good aspect for us to start do biomedicine field in Indonesia, in your opinion?
Oh, this is an interesting question. I think I'll spend too much time talking about this. But I guess the first thing is about the research culture, which is very different in different countries. So in Indonesia itself, we don't have a good research culture because it's rather quite isolated in terms of just the research environment itself. For example, if you have Eijkman and you have UI and you have other big uni, they're very isolated in a way that they're too scared of collaborating. They're too scared of partnership, sharing unpublished data, sharing knowledge, because, or even like just like sharing resources like cell lines or other stuff like that, which is very different from other countries like in Australia or in Singapore, where research is basically open and accessible for everyone. And that's the thing that we need to change in Indonesia. But if you talk about the biomedicine prospect in Indonesia in general, there is a big prospect there. It's not in a research sense, but it's more about the downstream application of it. For example, like the manufacturing of pharmaceutical stuff and something like that. I know that it's not directly related to biomedicine if you think about it carefully, because it's more about biotechnology processes that is being applied to produce a pharmaceutical products or something like that. But one way or another, the way we should think about what we can get from a biomedicine degree in Indonesia is not only about the technical skills, it's not only about the research skills, but it's more about just a broad general thinking, just a broad critical thinking that you basically develop throughout your time at i3L. I don't know about your experiences, but at least from my experiences at the time, I still remember on my first year, I couldn't be bothered to read a journal article. But at the end of my first year, I kind of like realized the importance, and as well as like I can actually spend time to read it. Like I can understand it, I can see the point that they are making and all that. It just shows you that you are actually developing, you're actually maturing in terms of like the way you think of certain stuff. And from my experience, from what I know from my friends who are working in Indonesia, they work in different sectors as well. Some of them are working in like GSE, some of them are working in manufacturing processes like in Calbio Global Medica. So what the same thing that I see from all of those positions in Indo, they only require one thing. They only require you to ask the right question in solving a problem. Because I feel like in general, we tend to ask the wrong question and try to address the wrong things when addressing a problem. And I guess from i3L perspective itself, by the time you graduate from i3L, you will eventually realize that the way you're being taught to think is very different from other uni or from other people in general in Indonesia. Just because we have the international exposure, but as well as because we have the scientific rigor that you don't get from other institute, for example. So if you think about it, it's a blessing that i3L is kind of like small in terms of size, because you get more attention from the lecturer and you get more feedback about what you should do or what you should focus on a certain task or a certain assignment, which you don't really get it from bigger university. For example, at Melbourne Uni as well, like I'm currently teaching or marking for certain subjects within my department, and soon I realized that it's good that I learned my undergrad in a rather small classes, because it really helped me to think and ask the right question and to eventually develop the way I think, which is not possible in large settings. Like for certain subjects in Melbourne Uni, for biomed, for example, at least there are 250 to 300 students, and there's no way for the lecturer to basically pay attention to every single student, and as well as for us who are marking the assignment or marking the exam to give a proper feedback to each student. So it's kind of like a combination of the prospect of biomed itself, the application of the stuff that we learn at i3L to just like the field itself in Indonesia. But if you want to talk about research to be specific, I see a point that Indonesia will eventually catch up, but it requires time and resources, basically. And if you heard about the case of admin being integrated as part of the brain, I don't think that as a bad thing. I think that it's a good thing. But again, there's still so many things that need to be done to eventually prepare Indonesia's biomedical research institute to be capable to do high impact research. And it can't be just solely dependent on the government. It should also be forced by the private sectors. So if you look at big companies such as Calbe, they have certain research institute, but the question is whether that is enough or more effort should be put into it. The same thing like with the Mohtar Riyadi Institute of Nanotechnology, where they are trying to regroup as a research institute and to redevelop their research interests and then to hopefully contribute more I just think that we have a lot of potential in Indonesia. It's just that we need a good research environment and we need a good resources to do high quality stuff, basically. But I see the future. It will take a while. It will take at least another 10 years, but we'll eventually get there.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that Indonesia have a really good prospect and opportunity, but it takes time, and there's actually a lot of startups and a lot of new company that's trying to employ this biomedicine field in their focus of research. And I think it's a really good thing that Indonesia has started to do this, to incorporate this biomedicines in their field. And I think
But
Mhm.
I have to add something. What I realized is that Indonesian researchers tend to ask the wrong questions to a problem. And because you are asking the wrong questions, the way you approach things are not good as well. That's why it's very hard for them to basically get published in high impact faculty journal, for example. So it's not only about resources or time, but also about the way you think. That's why I emphasize that critical thinking is very important, because technical skills can be done by anyone else, but the way you think is unique to you and no one else can basically take it from you.
Yes, definitely. And maybe Bernard have a question.
I have a question. So that like researchers like us in Indonesia is not that popular, and in your opinion, how researchers are valued in Indonesia? Because as I heard, there is a big stereotype that researchers in Indonesia is undervalued. So how your opinion about that?
Well, I don't want to say much because I'm scared to say it, but it is true. It is true. Like, just look at the salary, for example. How much do they pay us as a researcher in Indonesia is basically very low as compared to other type of jobs. When you think that as a researcher, you need that critical thinking, but as well as you need the technical skills. But again, it's very hard to say, and I don't want to say much because I'm not really within the field in Indonesia, and it's kind of like a sensitive subject. But I've heard from someone who's been working abroad for years, and then basically that senior postdoc got an offer in Indonesia, and she soon realized that the way they value you is very low, as well as the resources itself is not there, and it's not enough to. So just imagine someone like me. So I'm doing my PhD right now in Australia. I'm on my 3rd year right now. I've learned a lot of new different stuff, different skills. I've learned about techniques that may not be applicable to other settings, which is very specialized. I've used human samples in my projects. I've collected human samples for different purposes as well. And if you ask someone from abroad to go back to Indonesia, to come back to a position where you can't do a lot of this cool stuff, will you do that? Then that's the question, right? Then if the government or the institute itself in Indonesia want to attract us to come back, they should come with a better opportunities. They should come with a better offer for us to actually come back. And there is this question about nationalism, like, I'm Indonesian, but does it mean that I have to go back to Indonesia to contribute to the society? That's not right. What if I can do more abroad instead of going back to Indonesia. So yeah, it's like, just to be frank, to be honest, like for me personally, I don't see the attractiveness of Indonesia biomedical industry. Although, as you want to say that there are a lot of opportunities and all that, but again, the facilities, the resources, and the way, like the pay and everything, it's not worth the time that I've spent to develop my skills, develop my critical thinking, and just to be valued like that. So yeah, it's kind of like a tricky situation, to be honest.
Okay, so maybe what is the 3 things that you think is really important for, I think, research in general in Indonesia for us to become, I guess, more advanced and I guess more towards the research that I think better outside?
I guess first, there shouldn't be any hierarchy or political mess within the scientific research itself. That will be the first thing. And science shouldn't be politicized. Research shouldn't be politicized.
True.
The second thing will be collaboration, as well as just like sharing resources or just sharing equipment or stuff like that, which is still very limited in Indonesia. We have to sign a lot of NDA in Indonesia for something that is not necessary, and yeah, that's really hampering everything basically. And the last thing will be more money, and be more careful to use that money, because if you think about how much the government spend for research in Indonesia, is actually quite a lot. I'm not saying that we don't have money to do research. It's just that where the money ends up, it's not right. I feel like there should be an independent bodies who have the power to actually review all of those research projects going on within the country, and to carefully, again, fund people who ask the right question with the right skills, with the right tools. That, like, don't just fund someone for the sake of the name of that person itself. I know it sounds controversial, but I don't want to say much. I want to be very, very careful with that as well.
Okay, maybe Karin would have questions.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a crucial things needed. So, Ko, I wonder if students want to pursue their graduate study, what are the popular majors that are associated in biomedicine?
So, that's a very broad topic to be discussed. So, let me try to dissect it one by one.
Yeah.
So, just imagine you are about to finish your study at i3L. So it's 4 years undergrad program with a thesis project at the end of your study. So in Australia or in UK, for example, a bachelor is only 3 years. So they only have 3 years of courses basically without any thesis. If they want to do a thesis, they need to apply for an honors program, which is an additional year. So in total, it's also a 4-year program for them. So if you want to apply to a program such as in Australia or in UK, I guess to be specific in Australia for now, so you can, that's tricky as well. So ideally, they will ask you to apply for an honors degree. So you spend a year doing research in the lab. Or the other option is for you to do a master. But for a master degree, it's a 2 years program where you need to take a lot of subjects to finish while doing research on your second year. So it's more about how you strategize about what you want to achieve eventually. Like in my case, it's very different and very context specific, and it shouldn't be adapted to other situations. So for my case, I spent 4 years at i3L. I did my thesis in Singapore, and I got a publication from my thesis and my internship in Singapore. And then I applied for this program, for a PhD program. Ideally, they will ask me to submit my thesis or to show that I've done an honors or I've done a thesis before somewhere. And what they will do eventually, they will grade your thesis based on the University of Melbourne guideline or a standard, basically. If you pass, then you can be accepted to the PhD program. But again, what I'm trying to say is that it's very circumstantial, it's very context specific, it's not applicable to everyone. Because again, within i3L, the spread or the variability of the thesis is very different. Some students will do it at i3L, some students will do it in different countries. Even in different countries, they have different level or different quality of the scientific rigor as well. So it's really not applicable. But if you want to just talk about like in a broad sense, ideally you want to do your bachelor in Indo for 4 years, master 2 years, and PhD for 3 years to 4 years. And in Europe, that's how they do it. So for example, in Germany or in Netherlands, they will ask you to do 2 years of masters before you can enter a PhD program. But for example, in UK, you can just get a master by research, which is for a year only, and then you can apply for a PhD straight away after your master of research. But the problem is that with your master of research, you can't go to other European countries to do a PhD straight away. Even if you want to do a PhD, you have to take several subjects to fulfill to basically finish your master as a full master. So it's very different in different countries. And what you need to do if you are really interested to do graduate studies or graduate research somewhere, to carefully plan what you want to do. So for me, I've planned my PhD application when I started my 4th year. So just imagine you just finish your 3rd year, finish your internship, and then you come back to i3L for the 7th semester, and that's when I basically start to plan everything. So everything should be planned at least a year before. That's why I can start my PhD in October 2019 after submitting my thesis in June 2019. So there should be a lot of background research about different programs, and that will be very important for you to know where you can apply and where is it possible for you to continue your study, basically.
That's actually really cool. So you actually plan your PhD during your 4th year of your study in i3L. I mean, in spite of your busy schedule, you still able to do that. I think that you really have a really good time management.
But I don't agree if you say that you are busy as a 4th year student. I will not take that as an answer, because if you think about it, in your 4th year, some of the subjects are like lighter in terms of the contents and everything. It's more about, like I said again, critical thinking. For example, in human biology, we have the case study. It's more about critical thinking. It's not really about memorizing things or memorizing theories anymore. And yeah, you should have more time to actually think about what you want to do in your life instead of just saying that, oh, I'm too busy with my courses, or saying that, oh, I'm too busy writing my thesis. Like that's not an excuse. Like you have a lot of time.
Yes, definitely. And I do have questions though. I think it's really such a lighthearted question. So like we mentioned before, we want to have a really good career prospect in the future. But in your opinion, which one do you prefer? So if you want to go for thesis, would you prefer for us to actually do our thesis in i3L, or do you recommend people or maybe listeners to go abroad for our thesis? Or you think that both are fine depending on the topics?
Oh my God, I don't want to answer this question. I think I will disappoint, or I will hurt a lot of people by saying
No.
Yeah, be very careful when you edit this part.
Yeah.
At least at the time when I was at i3L, there were several projects going on at within i3L as well. I'm not saying that the projects are not good, but listen carefully. The skills, the techniques, the way you think, and the environment will help you to grow as a better person. And if you stay at i3L, you are not being challenged in all those aspects anymore, because you are in your comfort place. You're already comfortable with whatever is going on at i3L. But I'm not saying that you have to go somewhere and don't take any opportunities at i3L, because if you go to a research university or research institute somewhere in other countries, like, I don't want to say the country, but in general, and if you have a proper conversation with them about what you can learn, what techniques that will be applied in your project, and you think that those kind of skills are not necessarily important for you anymore, as in you already have the skills and you know what to do, like you have the technical skills to do that, then don't settle for that too. You have to find somewhere where you will be, again, challenged in all of those aspects, because without the challenge itself, you won't grow, like you won't learn much. So if you can find a place where you think that you are growing scientifically, technically, and the way you think is becoming better, then go for it. But if you think that by you spending time there, spending all the resources, like because of the financial thing as well, you need to pay to travel there, you need to pay to live there, and the skills or the what you get from that internship is not better than what i3L can offer, then what's the point of going there? So I guess be very careful, be very critical about deciding where you will go. So if you think that you can learn more at i3L, then do it. But if you think that what i3L offers is not enough for you, then you can go abroad. But what if things that are being offered abroad is less than i3L? Then just go back to i3L and don't settle for less. If you know that you want more, chase it. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, I think you really answered that question really neatly, and I think that's a really good answer. Though, don't settle for less. And last question, I guess. So, for our listener out there might be a future biomedical researcher. There also would be, I guess, our seniors that might be graduating and thinking about pursuing masters or maybe PhD. So what are your hope for these listeners that will be listening that would become the future biomedical research in maybe in Indonesia or maybe in abroad? What are your hope for them?
I guess stop worrying too much about. So this is one thing that I learned a lot when I graduate, is that first, you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. I know that we are being trained and we are being educated within one building, and you think that we are on the same learning trajectories from one another, and that's not true. First, you shouldn't ever compare yourself or compare your learning trajectories to another people or another alumni or anyone, basically. I believe that everyone has different learning trajectories. So if you think that you need time after your bachelor to basically work for a year or two to gain more insights about what you want to do, then do it. There is no timeline about, like, there is no best or the perfect timeline to be a researcher. It will be there if you have a PhD, but after your undergrad, you can make as many mistakes as possible and do it while you can. Because what I realized at the time is that everyone starts to compare my trajectories with their trajectories, which is not right. And what is my hope for those people who want to stay in research is that be greedy for a while. Don't think that you have to come back. Don't think that you have to look back about what you can do for the country or for the nation itself. But for once, be greedy and try to satisfy your scientific cravings. Like, what cool things that you want to learn and what will satisfy you as a researcher. Be wild about your thinking, about your scientific thinking. Because I feel like once you are outside of Indonesia, or once you are outside of that bubble telling you that this is what is possible and this is what you can do in Indonesia, it's very self-limiting. And once you go abroad, you'll be shocked by the feasibility, or just like what kind of things that can be done. And satisfy that cravings that you want to learn more, you want to gain more skills. You are curious about why a cancer grow like this but not like that. Try to ask those big questions that you won't be able to answer when you were in that Indonesian bubble, basically. So be curious, be bold, be greedy for a while. And I think that's very important to satisfy your needs as a researcher as well, because as a researcher, we like to think and we like to ask questions. And in Indonesia, you are not thought like that. Like, you are thought to be obedient. You are thought to follow certain rules or certain tradition. But once you're abroad, then you can start to dissect all of those things one by one and eventually realize that there's so many things that we don't know. There's so many questions remains to be answered. So just take your time, be present as well, process everything and learn as much as you can. And be greedy about what you want to do.
Wow, be curious, be bold, and be wild. Wow. You summarized it really well. And I think that's all from our podcast. We are really, really grateful for Kogyo for being able to become our speakers. And despite you're just recovering from COVID, and we are really got inspired by your insights and your answers actually. And we are really honored to have you here. And I think in our next podcast, we'll be inviting another guest speaker. So since for this one is from the M side, next week, our next podcast, we'll inviting someone from the BI perspective. And we are looking forward for this guest speaker also. And I would like to say thank you to Kogyo for the time and for allocating your time here and answers our questions and curiosity. And for the listeners, we'll see you in the next episode. And that's all from today's podcast. And bye-bye. See you next episodes.